$250 million in alleged bribes, a federal indictment in Brooklyn, 8 defendants, a solar deal the prosecutors openly called the corrupt solar project. This week, the entire criminal case simply vanished. On May 18th, 2026, the United States Department of Justice sent a short letter to a federal judge in the Eastern District of New York. The letter asked the judge to dismiss every charge against Indian billionaire Gautam Adani permanently. Not because the evidence fell apart, not because witnesses changed their stories, because the department chose not to pursue it anymore. One detail in that letter matters more than anything else. The career prosecutors who built the case did not sign it. This is not really a story about whether the founder did it. The indictment spells that out in cold, specific detail. We will get to those receipts. This is a story about power, timing, and what a different stack of paper can do when the right person holds it. A slide deck, a Trump lawyer, and a $10 billion promise. This is BillionCipher, and these are the 4 documents that decided whether one of the richest men on earth ever saw the inside of an American courtroom. The first document is 254 pages long. It was unsealed in November 2024 in a federal courthouse in Brooklyn. 5 counts: conspiracy to commit securities fraud, wire fraud, violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, obstruction of justice. The named defendant on page 1 is Gautam Adani, then 62, founder of one of India's largest conglomerates, and, depending on the day, somewhere between the 17th and 20th richest person alive. What makes the indictment unusual is not the charges, it is how specific they are. According to the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, between 2020 and 2024, the tycoon and his co-defendants allegedly agreed to pay more than $250 million to Indian government officials. The prize was a 12-gigawatt solar power deal, expected to generate over $2 billion in profit over 20 years. The prosecutors did not have to guess. Sagar Adani, the founder's nephew and an executive director at Adani Green Energy, allegedly kept running notes of the payments on his personal cell phone. Prosecutors called them the bribe notes. Each entry listed an Indian state and exactly how much solar capacity the payment was meant to secure. You can almost picture him scrolling through that phone in the back of a tinted Mercedes, thumbing through state names like a shopping list. The indictment goes further. WhatsApp messages used code names. The founder was SAG, or less subtly, the big man. The chief executive of Adani Green Energy, Vineet Jain, was called V, or the snake. One chief minister allegedly accepted roughly $30,000 per megawatt for a 7,000 megawatt deal. Another defendant photographed a kickback summary on his phone. A third prepared multiple PowerPoint presentations showing the cleanest ways to hide the alleged bribes. If you are looking for a smoking gun, the prosecutors believed they had an entire warehouse full. The second document is a bond prospectus. In September 2021, Adani Green Energy raised $750 million from international markets. $175 million of that money came straight from American investors. The offering materials contained specific written promises about anti-corruption and anti-bribery controls. The company claimed it took these issues with the utmost seriousness. The Securities and Exchange Commission says that was the real fraud, not the alleged payments themselves, but the lying about them on paper that landed in the inboxes of pension funds and mutual funds across the United States. Between 2021 and 2024, the conglomerate raised more than $3 billion while the alleged scheme was supposedly running. Every raise, the government argued, rested on documents that said the opposite of what was happening. When the indictment dropped in November 2024, Adani Green pulled a planned $600 million bond offering within hours. Share prices plunged. Bond yields spiked. Opposition politicians in India demanded their own investigation. The group denied everything and promised to fight. It was the second major crisis in 2 years. The first came in 2023, when Hindenburg Research accused the conglomerate of stock manipulation and wiped out roughly $85 billion in market value. This new case threatens something far more personal. The third document was never filed in any court. It was a slide deck. In early 2026, the founder brought in a new lawyer, Robert Giuffre Jr., co-chairman of Sullivan and Cromwell, and, according to the New York Times, a personal attorney to President Donald Trump. Giuffre's team prepared a presentation and took it to the Department of Justice. Most slides made the usual legal arguments. The defendants were Indian. The conduct happened in India. American law was being stretched too far. But one slide stood out. If prosecutors dropped the charges, the founder would invest $10 billion in the American economy and create 15,000 jobs. That is not a legal argument. That is an offer. The tycoon had made a similar public pledge weeks after Trump's election win in 2024. Now his lawyer was repeating it behind closed doors, with conditions attached. You can picture the polished conference room in Washington, the click of the remote, the quiet pause after that particular slide landed. Within weeks, the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Treasury Department began preparing their own settlements. The criminal case started to wobble. Justice Department officials would later insist the investment offer played no role. Take that for what it is worth. The Treasury Department announced its settlement first. $275 million to resolve alleged Iran sanctions violations. The Securities and Exchange Commission followed with a combined $18 million civil penalty against the founder and his nephew. For a family whose wealth sits somewhere between $82 and $108 billion, that is pocket change. Then the fourth document arrived. On May 18, 2026, it was a short letter from the Department of Justice to Judge Nicholas Garofis. The department had reviewed the case and decided, in its prosecutorial discretion, not to devote further resources to these charges. It asked for dismissal with prejudice, meaning the indictment could never be brought back. Politico noticed something almost immediately. None of the original prosecutors signed the letter. The men and women who had spent 18 months building the case were nowhere on it. That kind of institutional distance does not usually appear in public filings. It is the equivalent of sliding the paperwork across the table and refusing to make eye contact. The judge signed off. 18 months after the FBI described a multi-billion-dollar bribery and fraud scheme, the criminal case ended without a single court appearance by any defendant. The founder never set foot in the United States. He never answered a single question under oath. Here is what this story actually reveals. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the law the United States has used for nearly 50 years to police exactly this kind of cross-border bribery, has quietly been deprioritized. The founder is not the first high-profile defendant whose case has disappeared since January 2025. He is simply the most expensive. The civil fines are real money. They are also the kind of money a man in his position writes a check for and never thinks about again. No admission, no prison time, no precedent that this kind of alleged conduct will actually be punished. The case file is closed, and the bond markets have already moved on. Adani Green is raising money in the United States again. What you watched this week was not a billionaire being cleared. It was a billionaire being priced. If you want the case file on every story like this, subscribe to BillionCipher.